Hey, you, and welcome back to another episode of the Miss Michaela Mae Show. I'm your host, Miss Michaela Mae, here with my corgis, Tank and Willie. And today we are going to talk about what no one tells you about a spiritual awakening. And I wanted to make this episode honestly because I haven't heard anybody talk about the feelings that I feel about a spiritual awakening. I feel like a lot of people talk about it, they talk about all the benefits of it, but they don't talk about the trials and tribulations of having a spiritual awakening. So, what I'm going to do is I always like to start with an objective definition. So, just a definition you would go grab from a search engine of some sort. And then I like to start with and then I like to go into my personal definition. So, this is what kind of a definition you would see online. This is how when I give you my definition, that's how I'm going to define it for the remainder of the episode. It's really important to me that we're clear on terms. And so I want to make that clear. And so let's get into what the objective definition is. If you're on the YouTube video, I've got my handy little notepad. So I'm going to be reading from the notepad. And so the definition I pulled from the search engine is a profound and transformative process of gaining higher consciousness, shifting one's worldview, and seeing and developing a deeper sense of self. For me, seeing the world in a way that you've never seen it before, becoming aware that there is more than just us and the earth, that there is something bigger than us, there is something out there that we can't see necessarily with our physical eyes. And the big thing for me is I think of the part and this is my film nerd and story nerd and writer nerd coming in, is I think of the part in the hero's journey where the hero crosses the threshold. They've exited their old world and they've entered into their new world, and you hit the point of no return, because once we see something, once we know something, we can't unsee it. And so part of my journey is I was super intuitive as a kid, and then, like most people who are super intuitive, block it out, get numb because of trauma and the world and other things, because our world is not designed for people to be naturally tapped into their intuition. And so numbed it out, went on a healing journey and was like, I'm going to heal my shit one way or another. And what I learned through that process is our trauma is the callus between us and our intuition and us and God. And when you remove that trauma, you remove that callus, all that's left is you and God, or you and your intuition, however you want to look at that situation. So when I went and did it, it was a side effect of me healing. It wasn't, and this is again why it is important for me to make this episode today, is because there's so many people out there seeking to develop their intuition, and it's becoming another form of escapism, because what we want to start with is actually addressing our trauma first. And I think it's really beautiful that people want to develop these gifts. And I'm not someone who, again, sought out to develop an intuition or an intuitive part of me. It just happened as a side effect. And so when it did happen and all of a sudden I can talk to dead people, I freaked out. It was weird. I didn't like it. I still think it's kind of weird sometimes. And again, that's why it was important for me to make this episode today, in case there's anyone else out there that's like, I know this is my path and I know I have to embrace it. I know, just like in the hero's journey, I've crossed the threshold. I've entered the point of no return. I can't go back, because now I know what I know and I can't unknow what I know. And I don't always like it. And so I wanted to make this video for that person, because that's how I felt. And essentially what I did was, when I started the healing journey, Callus came out, I got all these intuitive gifts back. I actually started to numb it out again, because you can shut it off again. It's just, you just know now that you're purposely shutting it off. And that's what you can't unknow. And so I start shutting it off again. And really, I felt blind in the world. I felt like I was navigating the world without steering, and I didn't like it, because I like having that connection to God. I like having that connection to my intuition. I don't want to navigate the world without it. And so then I had reached a point of acceptance of, like, this is who I am. I've entered the point of no return, because that was what I was trying to do. I'd entered the point of no return, but I kept trying to go back. Kept trying to go back to how I was, back before I knew I was intuitive, back before I knew that this whole sixth sense thing was actually a real thing. And I just couldn't. And when I did, I didn't like it. And that was the other interesting thing. So now I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, I got to embrace this. It's okay that I still think it's odd. It's okay that I still feel awkward about it. And I'm just going to embrace this. I'm going to embrace the awkwardness. I'm going to embrace the weirdness. And eventually, I do believe I'm going to learn to love it. So, again, a long way of saying that is my big intention with this video. So, we've entered the point of no return. I've explained to you, the difference between me and what I've seen online. Because again, what I've seen online is people really wanting to develop their intuition and really wanting to develop their sixth sense, their spiritual gifts. And I'm over there like, yo. Here's what they don't tell you. So let's get into what they don't tell you, which is one of my biggest misconceptions is when I went through this journey and landed where I landed, for lack of a better term, I thought I would have all the answers. I thought I'd reach a point, which it's interesting because with having a very direct line to source, which again, we all have access to, you just have to remove that callus. But with having that callus removed, being able to tap into it pretty easily and quickly, I thought I would have all the answers and I don't. And that's the biggest thing that I don't think people tell you about having a spiritual awakening is we're still human. And this is why addressing the trauma is so important because we don't want spirituality to turn into another form of escapism from our own trauma. And that's where I feel like I've had a different journey than a lot of people I've seen online or even people I've taken classes from online is I did the trauma work first. And again, it was just a side effect. And even then, even though I have done not all my trauma work, but a lot of my trauma work, I still doubt myself. I was sitting with it today, and this is actually a trauma block I'm going to go work through after I get off this recording. Is I still feel like I have a big bowl of doubt in my stomach, and there is still things that I'm doubting, and so even though I can channel like, oh, this is what I need to do, this is the next move, I still got to deal with the human. And I think there's this assumption that when our spiritual gifts come back on, we don't have to deal with the human anymore. But actually, our priority is to be human and then to be a spiritual being having a human experience. But again, that is forgotten a lot is spiritual being having a human experience. Spirit came into earth to experience being a human. And I will always say being a human trumps over being spiritual. It's better to be grounded here on earth with your spiritual gifts off than it is to be very, very spiritual and not grounded here on earth at all. Do I think different people are on different soul paths and that there's people that maybe aren't here to be as human and they are supposed to be like very different and mystical? I do. Again, the point that I want to drive home here is all your spiritual gifts can be back on tomorrow and you're still going to have to face the human stuff. It's not a bypass the term coming to me is like a get rich quick scheme of you don't got to deal with all the human stuff. You do. So that's the biggest thing I think people are missing and not saying about having a spiritual awakening is you still have to deal with the human stuff. The second thing is I'm trying to think of what I wish I would have known because actually my second point I tied into my first point as well, but I'm trying to wish what I would have known. But I really actually do think it just comes down to those 2 points. You don't know everything. We don't know everything. And we still have to address the human part of having, even after the spiritual awakening, we still have to deal with being human. And so those are really the biggest things that I feel like no one tells people about having a spiritual awakening. It's not as easy as I think it's made out to be. And I found the word I'm looking for. It's very romanticized. Very. Like spiritual awakenings are very romanticized in our cultures, and there is a beauty to it. And again, like I said, when I tried to shut my gifts down after doing a bunch of trauma healing, I didn't like not having them. I didn't like feeling like I was navigating the world with blindfolds on and I kept tripping over myself without just asking my intuition or trusting my intuition. Like when I lose things, it takes me maybe 5 minutes to find something because I just asked my intuition and I can find it, which is amazing. There's so many good things about it, but we still have to deal with the human and we still have to go through it. So if you're listening to this episode, I would actually love to hear your feedback. What did no one tell you about a spiritual awakening that you wish you would have known? And then what do you feel like nobody just in general talks about spiritual awakenings? Like this is the one, like if someone's reading the comment section below this video and they haven't gone through a spiritual awakening or they're going through a spiritual awakening, like what is one thing you would want them to know? So if you feel so called, please drop your advice and your insights into the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video. We're going to do just a short and sweet little video today. I'm your host, Miss Michaela Mae, here with my corgis Tank and Willie. If you feel so called, I would absolutely love if you could leave me a review on the podcast, letting me know what you loved about it. And if you're on YouTube, please subscribe so you can watch every week. We're on weekly schedules now when a new video drops. Thank you for being here, and the boys and I will talk to you soon.